Welcome to my first episode of The Genius. On 2nd of August at 1939 and the month before the World War II, the US President Franklin Roosevelt receives a letter from the scientist Albert Einstein where he says, "Dear Roosevelt, the world is on the verge of crisis." What happened, Einstein? The crisis with the German scientists Fritz Strassmann and Otto Hahn discovered nuclear fission at 1938, which is simply when you target a nucleus of a heavy element like uranium, plutonium. And who would have this bomb? Hitler. It's a really big problem. Einstein didn't lie. This letter would start what's called the nuclear arms race between Allies and the Axis. Every party wanted to make the bomb before the others. If we considered wars as rounds and battles, like a boxing match, then the atomic bomb is the knockout, where a party can end a war with a one move, no matter how many rounds or battles it lost before. The knockout weapon race, the atomic bomb. Actually, the scientists' effort for the making of nuclear weapons were too great, and in fact continued for years. Through scientists like Ernest Lawrence, who received the Nobel in 1939, he invented the cyclotron. The problem with that all, these efforts were scattered. What they used when scientists work in USA is different than that of Canada and than that of Britain. How would they communicate with each other? Especially on the other side, the German efforts are unified. All of this was bound to change when the US entered the war in 1941 after Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. The US President Roosevelt decided to unify all scientific efforts to make the atomic bomb in what is called Manhattan Project. The idea of the project is gathering the efforts of over 100,000 scientists from different nationalist groups and specialists in a united front to make the atomic bomb before the German. Although the project is named Manhattan Project after the first office in Manhattan, the project had nothing to do with Manhattan. It was something like New York's downtown, but the project was done in far and isolated location. Scientist Robert Oppenheimer. He will be responsible for leading the all scientists. Oppenheimer was a weird person. When he was a kid, his colleagues described him as a genius. He never left the library. If he finished studying on physics, he would study Indian philosophy and language and many things. It's like the one who's studying the cancelled lessons. Some sources say that the lecturer in a university in Netherlands, he mastered the Deutsch in 6 weeks without a teacher. He is very genius, but not like me. But there's another part from Oppenheimer, the weird part. The same smart student tried to poison his professor in Cambridge, Patrick Black, with an apple injected with chemicals. Why? Because he didn't appreciate his talent. And Oppenheimer thought his professor wasted his time. But he just wastes your time, not your wallet. Despite all the weirdness around Oppenheimer, his ingenuity in the field and get the high position in the middle of war, was leading thousands of scientists from all countries to design the most dangerous weapon. It's true that Manhattan Project united all scientists and targeted their efforts in one place. All countries and the group work on one target, the bomb. But this exact point was a weakness in the eyes of the US government. The CIA found itself obligated to securely contain more than 100,000 scientists with their families. All of these are to work in complete secrecy and under surveillance without leaking any information or giving the impression to the world that something is happening. Imagine, my friend, the secret is known by 100,000 people and you wanted to keep it secret. It's not a silly secret like yours. It's the atomic bomb secret. The main lab of the project in Los Alamos, New Mexico had all its scientists interact with nicknames, because if one of them decided to leak any information, they wouldn't know any of scientists' names. Imagine all children born in that area, their father registered their birth certificate in New Mexico to keep the name Los Alamos off the radar and they keep the scientist location hidden. This strict safety measures smothered Oppenheimer because they slowed down the work pace. That's why he will insist all scientists in the project share information freely and smoothly. That's the main goal of the project anyway, that everyone talks together instead of working individually. Oppenheimer also insisted that no scientist gets disqualified just for being left wing or center back or having German roots. Yes, here were German scientists work on the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer and the Manhattan scientists' effort finally paid off in the Trinity test. On 16th of July 1945, it's the day when Oppenheimer see a successful test, the atomic bomb that works on the fission of plutonium. When Oppenheimer saw the bomb with its destructive effect, said in a famous quote, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Oppenheimer described the scientists' reaction when they saw the atomic bomb. Some of them laughed and others cried. The majority were silenced by the scene. That moment was the last of the Manhattan scientists and united for one goal. According to a Manhattan Project scientist, Victor Viskov, that some scientists would strictly refuse using this weapon they made in the war. And some of them write to the White House and plead that if it was ever used, it would not be dropped on civil area, for it was a deadly weapon. Other scientists would wish if they had quit the project in the first place, like the Polish scientist Joseph Rotblat quit the project in 1943 after he knew for sure the German scientist wouldn't have the time to make the atomic bomb. He devoted his life as activist against nuclear weapons, and his effort gained him a Nobel Prize for Peace in 19 1995. After Trinity test and the scientists shock, Oppenheimer would hold a conference and say their famous sentence: "Today you are heroes. In a short time you would be criticized for a long time." Years later, Oppenheimer was said about this moment, the scientists' confusion was out of their guilt from what their hands made. It was a feeling they didn't have in mind nor calculate. That feeling would haunt them forever. Despite the pleas of the scientists and that all war result confirmed, Hitler is defeated in 1945. The US in the 6th of August in 1945 was bombed the Japanese city Hiroshima with a uranium bomb called a little boy. It killed 237,000 people in a snap. That for Japan surrender and the war is in. People say the atomic bomb was a knockout move. For example, Henry Stimson said in 1947 that Japan would have never surrendered except by a land invasion, which would have killed 1 million soldiers from US and double them of Japanese soldiers. So when you kill 312,000 people for the sake of saving million people, real question, is that good or no? According to these numbers, bomb was merciful option. On the other hand, many historians say that all given confirmed that Japan would have eventually surrendered and that the bomb could have at least been thrown in a safe spot like Tokyo Bay, would giving out the same message without any victims. If we want to back to Oppenheimer, see him pulling himself away. He said he delivered his national and moral duties. He is not guilty and the full responsibility falls on the government, not the scientists. He said that although the Manhattanish project, we can't forget the other inventions. Nuclear power peaceful use that generates electricity is essential in inventions like the MRI machine, therapy for cancer. Manhattan scientists' efforts lead to new discoveries that benefit humanity like promethium element 61 that was found during the project. Oppenheimer's story with the bomb didn't end here. In September 1949, the Soviet Union would succeed in making its first atomic bomb. We are not alone anymore. The leakage of the secret made the US worry. The secret of the bomb is in the hands of their enemy. It's more dangerous to them now. Here, the US would need to level up and make a stronger weapon and ask Oppenheimer again to supervise a project. They wanted to make the hydrogen bomb. You remember the atomic vision that the atomic bomb depends on? The hydrogen bomb has this only as its first stage. It uses the fission energy. I know you didn't understand anything. Let me explain. What I want to tell you that the bomb start fission would release 700 times more energy than the little boy bomb. Here my friend Oppenheimer refused to share on this project. So actually Oppenheimer quit, but the US effort would continue by depending on the other scientists till the bomb is made in November 1952. In that moment, the great scientist Oppenheimer ended World War II with a knockout would be considered a spy by US and conflict with the Soviet Union. The man that got you the bomb is a spy now just because he refused continuing in military war? Here, my friend, security agents started leaking information about an old relationship to Oppenheimer with Jean Tatlow, and that girl was in the Communist Party. Although the security agents checked all this information 1,000 times before starting a project in Manhattan. They did a full scan on his life and all his scientists' life, so they already know about his girlfriend. But when he refused supervising the hydrogen bomb, they chose to make him a spy. The US President Eisenhower in 1953 to prevent any information on the nuclear reached to Oppenheimer. Although some scientists like Albert Einstein objected on this decision, Oppenheimer would pay for his choice and turn from hero to spy and becomes blacklisted. But Oppenheimer do this weapon because he believed if he didn't, Hitler would have done it first and Hitler would go wildfire on the world. After he finished his mission, he became a traitor when he used his scientific status to hinder a more deadly weapon because he saw his country slowly turn into Hitler. Despite all Oppenheimer's fears, he couldn't stop them and considered himself at the end as the messenger of death in the world. Although many boxing rounds end in a tie, but the knockout always breaks a tie and leaves the ring with only one winner. Oppenheimer was the man of the knockout to the enemies of his country, but at the same time, other scientists were around and saw what he didn't, and they felt both that countries don't stop after they win, and they always want to have more weapons. These scientists try to make the conflict that would destroy the world end at least in a tie. No winner, no loser. In his book, The Treachery and Pursuit for the Most Dangerous Spy in the History, Frank Close talks about one of the most spy in the history, German scientist Klaus Fox, a scientist and spy. How come? After World War II, the US and the British intelligence succeed in Venona project. This project made the American and English decipher the Soviet codes. The Soviet messages are now readable, so they were able to uncover the Soviet spies. They found many spies, but the big problem, 3 spies in Manhattanish project. About the big security and everything they done. What about the safety measures and the nicknames and every security? And the freedom Oppenheimer allowed on the project between scientists to exchange his information, then surprise him about the spies. Actually, he would be surprised just 2 or III. When these spies were asked after long years about the reason of leak the information to the Soviet, they said the biggest reason, and focus here, was their faith. That one country have the atomic bomb turns it into a scary country like Hitler. But if more than one countries have the atomic bomb, there would be balance. And every country will be was worried about the other country maybe use the same weapon. Like, if you will come for me once, I will come for you twice. Although Oppenheimer was an intelligent scientist, he is not a traitor. But his country considered him a traitor, and his efforts weren't enough to stop the hydrogen bomb. While Fox and Home betrayed the country that trusted them, but their decision helped in stopping missiles. The question here, who is good and who is bad? And can a scientist be good and evil at the same time? And the end of that, knowledge has its benefits and prices to pay. After the Second World War, at the bomb site with Hiroshima called the Ground Zero, a memorial was built saying, "Let all the souls here rest in peace, for we shall not repeat the evil." Single point where science, morals and the feelings meet is that we can't repeat the same action and expect different results. In 2016, the American President Obama, during his visit to Hiroshima, said that the only way to avoid what happened before is by not having the science as the only answer to our questions. And that science without goals and morals would give in flawed answers. Answers like terrifying bomb. And always you have to remember, the knowledge is very tricky. And also subscribe and like the video and waiting for upcoming episodes.